Happy Monday, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jen Carfagno.
And I'm Kate Parker. We have a lot going on today.
Yes, we do. And yes, there's still a lot dry west. You know, it's the winter that just doesn't go away in places like western New York.
No, it just never leaves. Another clipper with snow and rain is sliding across Buffalo and comes in on the heels of back-to-back winters of more than 100 inches of snow. So our Scott Newell is live in Buffalo, where it's mainly rain there that we saw this morning, but obviously still very snowy scene on the banks of Lake Erie behind you. Look at the radar, Jen, because this is, right where we have Scott here, Gus. In Rochester, you've got 30-mile-an-hour winds. Here's where we've got a lot of that precipitation still coming down from Burling on down to Long Island. You still have some of that snow starting to make that line a little farther to the east. So Boston, you've actually mixed out of some of the rain, and you're now seeing snowflakes. We have seen a little bit of freezing rain in a couple of spots, so you might want to be careful as you're heading out the door this morning and getting out on the road, because you might hit some spots that had a little bit of snow, and it might be deceiving because you could have a little bit of ice on top of that. Look at Boston. A couple flakes still coming down there, but you're not going to see too much from the system. It is a clipper, so therefore it moves very quickly. It's in and out of there. So what you're going to see happen is you're going to see this rain start to spread a little farther north. In some of the higher elevations, the Adirondacks, you could see up to 6 inches of snow in some spots. That's where you see that snow really hanging around, but in other places you won't see quite as much. Now Buffalo, today you've got kind of rain, a couple of little snow showers. Tonight it quiets down, but our second clipper is already in there by tomorrow, Jen.
Yeah, that one is right on the heels of this last one. So tracking this one is Mike Bettis, clipper system number 2. Mike, this one another quick mover. You think it'll put down a lot of snow?
I don't think. Storm victims are still trying to get their lives back in order, something people in the town of Joplin, Missouri know all too well. Now students and teachers who lived through the deadly 2011 tornado in Joplin are lending a hand in elementary school and more.
Are at Halifax International Airport this morning after the crash landing of Air Canada Flight 624.
Yeah, about 23 passengers were injured. Fortunately, none were critically injured. The snow was falling when the plane clipped an antenna as it was landing short of the runway. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is in Halifax with more.
Thanks for staying with us here on Weather Center Live. I'm Jen Carfagno.
And I'm Kate Parker. Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot on tap here as far as weather goes. Wet week for a lot of folks.
Yes, so we have some rain and some thunderstorms and some lightning in the forecast, but we still have snow and
41-mile-an-hour wind gusts right where you are right now, so stay warm. Okay, let's talk about these clipper systems. Now, in their nature, they're so fast-moving, these systems, that they do have a lot of wind associated with them. They do get pretty breezy like that, but the snow is typically pretty light and it's fast-moving, and that's exactly what's happening right now. Take a look at what we have going on. We've got some light snow showers through eastern Mass, starting to move offshore. We've got western Mass getting a few of those as well. Maine, you're getting a little bit, still rain down East Maine, but you will eventually transition into a little bit of snow there, and you'll notice that New York, you're kind of in the clear, at least in the city for the time being. Now, some of these snow showers do have a little bit of mixed precipitation in them, so you might see some added slickness on the roads. You might not get the traction that you would expect if you do get some of that refreezing or that ice that's happening on top of that. So just beware. This is what it looks like timing wise. So we're starting to see things move very, very quickly, wind down, transition into rain, with the exception of the Adirondacks, because that's where you're going to see that snow really hang out upstate New York. You could be seeing the highest accumulations out of this first clipper. So by the time we get to later tonight, things have really quieted down for you. But look at this. Everything's in place. Everything is lined up. We got the cold air on tap, and then we've got these lows that develop, and they just clip along and right along this jet. So that's exactly why we're going to see this 1-2 punch of these clipper systems, because everything's just set up just right. So our next clipper is on the way. The first one going to do a little swath of about 1 to 3 inches, 3 to 5 again, like I was talking about near Saranac Lake. But look at this next swath. This is the next one. So this is tonight. This is the second clipper coming out of the Midwest, moving to the northeast. You can see how narrow this band, though, of snow is expected. You're going to get rain as far south as Pittsburgh and then all the way down into West Virginia. But on the northern edge of that, it does stay snow. So, Jen, it is looking a little bit on the wet side and a little bit on the snowy side for a little bit longer.
And a little bit on the wintry side, too. And, we switched from that to severe weather. And I know we had a very busy last week when it came to severe weather and tornadoes. But overall, the season has been very slow to start. So we're going to look at some of the stats. Year-to-date, tornadoes so far at 35, well below the average of 141. In fact, 75% below the average. We look at the March specifics. 8 tornadoes for the month of March, well below the average. In fact, the record slow March now. We have passed over 1969, and it will be the record slowest March when it comes to tornadoes. Let's look at Kansas City, because this is one of the spots we'll be watching for this week as we start to see some changes to our pattern. Kansas City, on average, we look back in history, you look at May to be the busiest month. March is not the typically busiest month for tornadoes in Kansas City, but April things typically start to ramp up. And as we switch this week from March into April, it seems like almost right on cue, we're going to start to see the pattern change. And so Mike Bettis is standing by with a look at what's going to change this week, Mike, and how we're going to start to see and where. And maybe tomorrow, let's take a look at some of the records that will fall today across the West. We've got Vegas, Sacramento, Ely, and Flagstaff all looking at record-breaking temperatures, or at least tying. And Vegas looks like no problem, we're going to break it. The region Y is this big ridge that we've had in the West for really much of the winter, but lately it has been very strong, and we've seen a lot of record heat all the way up into Idaho and Montana and Wyoming, and certainly across the Southwest. Phoenix, we set record heat over the weekend as well. So here's where we are for today, heading again to 98 degrees in Palm Springs. Over the weekend we saw 102 in Death Valley, and we're going to see that kind of heat again, but then it's going to relent a little bit as we get into the rest of the week, when we'll finally start to get us into an easier pattern to bear when it comes to the heat out here in the West. But for today, we've got more records to talk about in places like Vegas. So Kate, the dry, the hot has been a real problem, of course, with the drought, and that's a problem that doesn't seem to be ending. Yeah, it's a countdown clock there. Now, the fourth year of a devastating drought going on right now in California. The governor just signed a $1.1 billion drought relief. Well, this year is about wrapping up when it comes to our water season, right. And you look at the snowpack here running well below average. Less than 10%. Well, this is some good news for Boston. We've got the MBTA's commuter rail service says it's back to full service this morning. It's been a brutal winter of heavy snow and frigid temperatures that caused multiple changes to the schedule. Yeah, at one point the entire system was shut down for more than 24 hours. My goodness, people in Boston have been glad to get